Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to Greg and Victor for having me here. I'm Gianluca De Tori. I'm from Italy. I will be moderating this panel. The idea here is to give you some practical stories of innovation, rainforest activities, things that have happened, are happening around the world. And it's always interesting to see things from a different perspective, because somehow some of the things that are going to be said here probably going to resonate with what we have domestically in our own markets. Just as opening introduction, what I wanted to tell you is that in Italy, we have done already a seminar about rainforest. Just a few weeks ago, we had the opportunity to have Greg over in Rome. And it had a big impact from a cultural standpoint. A lot of people have talked about it. We broadcasted, we've done fundamentally a 2-day session. We had the opportunity in the first day to gather together about 30, what we thought were 30 relevant keystones, relevant people in the Italian ecosystem from different backgrounds. So we had this meeting with the Minister of Education and Research, where we had about 30 people, entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, VCs, academia representatives, governmental agency, consultants to some other ministries, and so on. And we started to drive the discussion, about, first of all, about the canvas and try to decode that. And each one of the people started to come out with their own ideas. And then the next day, we did an open forum on the internet where a couple of hundred people, it was open to anybody to participate in Rome, driven by Greg and myself, where we opened up the discussion to everybody in Italy. We even put up a website where anybody could contribute their own idea to fill the canvas. And this activity is still going on right now. We call it crowd canvassing, fashionable word these days. And now the next step is going to be, we're going to be collecting all of those ideas and reorganize them in a white paper that we will kind of like donate to the government and to the country, because right now, obviously, economic development in Italy is the issue, is among the many issues that there are right now. That's definitely the issue. I mean, and we have a certain new government that is really, opening up new possibilities that we didn't have just a few years ago. So anyway, I would, start with Francisco. And I would like to know about Colombia, because there's been a lot of people talking about the success story of Colombia in this field. And we've seen documentaries about innovation in Colombia, very interesting. In Medellin, for example, that when I remember years ago when I was in Colombia on vacation, it was one of the toughest, most difficult cities. Now it's a place of rebirth, economic growth, and innovation. So can you tell us that story? How it started, and where is it going? What have you learned so far, Francisco?
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank Greg, because he has been a very important piece of this puzzle that we have been trying to build in these months that we have been working, because this is a really very new initiative. That's the reason why I decided, when Greg asked me to come here, to put a title to this presentation, or with this conversation, I will say, it's a journey to the future. We started in a way which I feel proud of it, and we are trying to bring more people into this journey, because I think it is worldwide. This started many years ago, but I wanted to, start when we received a call from the National University, which is the largest university in our country, and they wanted to ask a group of people and myself, I come from the private sector, to join them and other universities to work around science, technology, and innovation. And therefore, what we did was to set up a kind of a framework to have a continuous conversation, and I want to stress the world conversation, because that's what we did for almost 18 months, trying to understand, trying to build, since we have been talking so much about it, trust among a group of people that we didn't know each other before we started this journey. From other experiences I had, I decided to involve people from media, and there is a very important magazine, Semana magazine, and we decided to work together in order to move this idea in our country. And as Greg says, it's not a proof of concept, it's a proof of relevance. We did in 2009 the first conference about the alliance university, private sector, and state that was done in our country. And 2 weeks later, we have the first roundtable about innovation, bringing people and research groups together in a large room, in a conference room. And the surprise was amazing. We were expecting very few in those two spaces, too few people, and we had almost 10 times the amount of people that we were expecting. Just to give you an example, for the conference, we were expecting 150, we got almost 1,000 people. And you know, you have to be aware of the signals that the environment gives you. Sometimes you have good ideas, but you have to be aware of the time, the proper time to bring them. And this was such a case. So it's an important part. But there was something else that happened. And this is just a case in which proves that you have to do a lot of things in order to put these pieces of this puzzle together. I belong to a group that I started to form in 1989. It's called the President's Forum. And it's a group of presidents of different companies. We have almost 200 people in that group. And we were celebrating 20 years anniversary. And I decided to propose to my colleagues, I was the president of the group at that time, that we, as a part of the celebration, to put together a trip to see outside what was happening around science, technology, and innovation. And we were able to bring to this trip Harvard and MIT, who offered us 1 week with 16 people from different universities of this country. And also Syngenta and IBM opened their labs. And so we have 10 days of continuous conversation within a context which was very rich, and it gave us a lot of ideas, and especially, you know, the message was very clear. We were wasting a lot of time. The world was moving around us, and we were not jumping on this fast-moving train. That was the word that was used in Harvard. From that, we decided to look for, you know, how to, you know, to move these ideas, because from Harvard and MIT, the what and the why was very clear, and now the how was important part in the equation. We have a professor from University of California who mentioned the case of San Diego. So we were curious, and I think curiosity plays a very important role in the discovery of things. And we decided then to make another trip to California. And I just want to stress one very important point here. We were in the middle of the presidential campaign. There was a new government coming into the palace of Nariño, and two of the people who today are very important persons in this new government were part of this group. So it was very easy to communicate to them that innovation should be part of the agenda of the new government. And that's what happened. For the first time ever in my country, innovation is one of the 5 pillars of the development for Colombia. And they decided to also put a lot of resources. We are getting a lot of resources out of oil, coal, other minerals. And 10% of that, which could be almost to up to $20,000 million in the next 7 years to use them to promote and to close the gap, investment gap that is, my country has in this field. And therefore, you know, the framework of this next trip to California was very important because we had officially come to the light of our country. Innovation was important part of that, and we were people who were working for many months trying to push this idea. So that was important. From San Diego, we found out about San Diego Connect. Then we went to University of Texas, ICS Square, and that was a very important journey because we found out some of the pieces that we were looking for, and we decided to do something about that. And therefore, we put in place a business plan to sell the idea, and then and to tell a story, because this is a storytelling process. Today, after all this effort, we have Connect Bogota region, which is an organization that has 23 universities and 25 private companies behind, which is very important because we decided to put money into this organization to do things that we knew that we have to do. And I personally made a decision, which was to spend half of my time as a volunteer to help promote this new organization in my country. What was the purpose of this journey? From my personal point of view, I wanted to make a difference. I have been a very successful businessman. I think I reached a time in my life that I wanted to give back to the community, and that was a very important part of the personal decision. In regard to the strategy, we wanted to help close the gap between a country which has been getting all the resources out of the commodities, minerals, agriculture, and so on, and to move it to the knowledge economy, which is driving the world and is moving very, very, very fast. We wanted to be in this train that was moving very fast also, as it was mentioned in Harvard. And we wanted to have this message that the process takes time, but we just can't waste time. We have to move very fast. The organizers of this meeting asked me, to share some of the personal things with you today. So, what was the luggage for this journey? As I mentioned, I was the president of this President Forum, which was important to gather people around this idea. I had some experiences trying to reach out the public sector with the national police, with the armed forces, with the educational system. Things in life happen, and I end up writing 3 books, one of them with McGraw-Hill, which was published in 24 countries. I was part of a big effort to save an industry, our construction industry in Colombia, in the worst time ever at the beginning of the 2000s. And I was the president of the board, of the chairman of the board of that organization. What were the lessons that we learned, and I learned, and I want to share with you? That in order to start an innovation ecosystem, it is a really huge leadership challenge. Because what you are trying to do, besides putting together a lot of things which are material, resources, people, and things like that, as has been mentioned many times during these 2 days, we are trying to accomplish very important things to change culture. And that's not an easy task. And leadership and change are two words that come together. Therefore, that's the reason why I say this is a big leadership challenge. The second thing that we learned is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have time for that. Especially, you have to be willing to ask for help. Many times in my life, I've seen that when I have been in problems, I have been in trouble, or people are facing problems, mainly the reason is because it is difficult to ask for help. So we decided to ask, and that's the reason why we did this trip. The third thing was to build a coalition to support this initiative. And this coalition has to be inclusive. Diversity is a very important part of this building process, and therefore that's what we did. We tried to reach out and to look for people, different people with different points of view. It has been very important. The fourth lesson is that you have to tell a compelling story to show how better you can make the future for yourself and for many other people around you. To be able to package this message in a way that will motivate. It is not just to go to the intellectual part. You have to reach the emotional part of the people, because at the end, nobody knows what is going to happen if you reach the end of the journey, which I don't believe that you will do it, but at least it will give some hope and motivation to keep walking. And finally, you have to be patient, and you have to be prepared to learn. Otherwise, you have to be humble enough to recognize that this is a new thing for you, that this is a new thing for your community, and you have to be patient and be prepared to fail many times. I think that's...
Thank you, Francisco. I think one of the, let's say, learnings from my point of view is that, and I've seen that in Italy as well, the importance of people like Francisco in an ecosystem should never be underestimated. People that, for their backgrounds and their skills and what they do, their experience, can connect different ecosystems that need to work together, and they typically, in the normal world, do not necessarily cooperate as much as you would think. Like in the Colombia, you have university, academia, therefore you have, let's say, the education, but also the scientists right there, accessible, and the private sector, and talking about innovation and going to Silicon Valley and seeing these kind of, things all together and sharing a vision. And I think a second step that I found interesting, which I think, again, in our thinking back in Italy about things that need to be done, is you need to share this vision. You need to identify a business plan, as you said. Okay, this is what we're going to do, and try to explicitly discuss that with the different parts of the ecosystem so that everybody can start to see the same picture, talk the same language, and start to work more collaboratively in a more open environment. So I wanted to give it out to Paul Basil, that in India is very fascinating. I'll give you the mic, and there you go, there's your mic. From India, you have a very strong on-the-ground experience. So we'd be very interested to, if you can share with you the practical, the more, down to the earth, implementation. How do you bring all of these ideas into the ground and make an impact?
Oh, thank you. My name is Paul Basil, and I run an incubator in the southern city of Chennai in India. Much like how design fails us, I started trying to set up this incubator, incubating innovations and enterprises for the bottom of the pyramid. This was 10 years back. And I failed to realize that the biggest dearth that was there was the pipeline of entrepreneurs. And we were there as an incubator wanting to support more and more of these entrepreneurs. And there was an implicit assumption that there was entrepreneurs all available, a pipeline of innovators ready to be incubated, but that was not true. We've seen close to thousands of ideas year on year participate in all kinds of business plan competitions, all kinds of things. But we still are yet to meet exciting ideas. And I think the theme of this conference about innovation, about innovating better business models, better technologies, better products, and services which make a difference to the poor, I think is extremely, extremely relevant. Um, so, so the kinds of entrepreneurs that we work with, people who take knowledge process outsourcing into villages of India, set up business processing outsourcing centers in villages, taking anemia testing for the first time, doing minimally invasive technologies, using non-invasive technology to test and screen anemia in villages of India, to somebody like Sam who's used rapid refrigeration to chill milk right at village societies and therefore reduce post-harvest losses in milk. Now, what does it require to discover? What does it require to support such entrepreneurs? And I think that becomes an important ask. So the obvious route for us was to do these normal business plan competitions. And year on year, we've done that. I sit on the jury of many. My colleagues keep visiting many. But the challenge that we've always faced is great entrepreneurs don't come there. And you have the usual suspects which move from business plan competition to business plan competition, winning awards, but the great entrepreneurs are not there. So the challenge really has been, how do you discover these kinds of entrepreneurs? And after seeing this whole pipeline, one of the things that we've learned is, you need to actually mentor entrepreneurs. And we did hear that discussion around mentoring and how important it is to build an innovation ecosystem. And we've realized that there are great products with bad business models. We've seen lousy products with a good business model attached to it. So how do you actually coach entrepreneurs and fast track that process of getting their either product right or business model right? And how do you make those investable is something that we do. And this is a wonderful learning experience for us in creating a pipeline of investable social entrepreneurs in India. Now, I also heard as we started working with early stage entrepreneurs, we realized that we need to catch entrepreneurs young. And we saw this huge trend in India where we're seeing much more of this, many of the social entrepreneurs setting up businesses coming from the middle class of India. While they're excited about generating wealth, they've started finding new meaning to entrepreneurship, finding new meaning to solving problems of the poor through innovation and entrepreneurship. And I think that's a group that we are now working with. We have a Young Innovators program, which is specifically called as a My Idea program, where young students from campuses across the country actually participate in that program to discover innovations and entrepreneurs. Access to capital, I think, still remains. I heard Randall talking about, hey, capital is not a problem. Of course, it is not a problem if you get the right ideas and the right skills, but I seriously believe it is a problem. When you believe in your idea, the other side doesn't believe in it. Now, you can't actually dress your idea to make the other side believe, but yes, it becomes important to pitch your story, create a story, but most of the successful entrepreneurs that we've heard of have believed in their ideas and investors haven't. So the question is, how do you attract more capital? How do you attract early stage capital? How do you attract even small ticket capital, which is required to prove your business models and therefore attract greater capital? And in India, the biggest challenge is all incubators put together. The kind of money that is there in their hands is maybe a couple of $1 million, $5 million. But all the social venture funds, if you add all the assets under management, is something in the range of $500 to $600 million. And all the social venture funds in India were set up sometime in the years 2006 up. And it is only natural that the venture funds are becoming bigger and better. And obviously, as they get bigger, you start doing much higher size deals. And how do you actually progress a deal from an earlier stage? And obviously, that comes to the next issue, which is really incubation investing not being financially viable. So we've tried our hand at cracking that issue by conceptualizing a Will Grow Fund, which I'm sure that we will launch very shortly. But the piece that I think is important is mentoring. And I think I'm not talking about low bono, pro bono mentoring. I'm really talking about mentoring that is aligned to the incentives of the company as well as the mentors. And how do you actually create those alignment of incentives? I think that's the big challenge. You can get a whole lot of volunteers, but how do you actually align this? Because this is about patient mentoring. This is about 5 to 6 years of engagement between the mentor and the company. So how do you align those incentives? Very important. We have a global fellowship program that gets together young mid-career talent to work with some of these incubating companies. So they spend 12 months working with these companies, hands-on, getting their hands dirty. We believe that these experiences trigger entrepreneurship in many of these folks. And many of those taking to this fellowship is doing so because a couple of years ahead, they want to actually take to entrepreneurship. The other thing that we saw, especially in serving the bottom of the pyramid markets, is really access to these markets. You wouldn't believe Coke and Pepsi get sold in these villages, but to get an innovative product out there is mind-bogglingly difficult because you just can't incentivize the distribution and the dealership to get your products in. And when you have a cluster of products, then it becomes even more difficult. So we realized that in the working with innovations, it becomes important to create a platform that actually can aggregate a whole lot of products that reach the rural poor. So we created Will Grow Stores, which actually sell some of these products as a separate for-profit company. At the cost of getting the anger of Greg and Al and all at GIS, I think conferences achieve a purpose, but I don't think they trigger innovation. So we've realized that after a couple of years of holding these conferences. But what we realized is it becomes important to take some of these into the next round towns across India. So that's the task that we're actually engaged in now. How do you create local ecosystems from where the next generation of entrepreneurs are going to come? Because everyone doesn't have the opportunity to attend a GIS. So how do you create those smaller GISs in towns across the countryside and then discover more entrepreneurs? Service providers supporting social entrepreneurs, very critical. So we believe that while entrepreneurs are local, they need to be connected to global networks. And that's what we do with the Aspen Network Development Entrepreneurs, setting up a chapter in India. And that aggregates a whole lot of service providers around innovation enterprise. Recognition important. You see the former president of India awarding some of our innovators. Very, very critical to motivate, encourage, excite, and recognize innovators and entrepreneurs. Very important piece. Knowledge, equally important. You would be surprised that in India, there are very, very few universities which teach innovation and social entrepreneurship. And even if it is taught, it's taught as an elective where people don't pick it necessarily. So how do you actually encourage more structured learnings and courses around it? Thank you, but I'd like to end with something which I think which I found extremely useful. This is a street, couple of blocks from where I live in Chennai. Extremely dirty. People trash all around. No respect. But this is what I've seen there. A couple of months later, simple innovation. We believe in a lot of gods, a country like India, and these couple of paintings really made a difference to that very, very shoddy street. I believe innovations need to be extremely simple. They need to be elegant, and creating an ecosystem is therefore even more simpler. They need to be very, very elegant if we need to build a thriving ecosystem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. It's, again, interesting how, thanks. How in your stories, I guess, given the set of conditions where you were operating, you started to develop piece by piece a journey where you were starting to understand there was a missing piece in the system that you started to adapt. So where are the entrepreneurs? That's how they find them. Well, how do we mentor them? That's, then the mentor network. And then how do we fund them? Then the seed fund. That's very fascinating. I would really like to ask you, I'm sorry, Sad, If you can be more, short in the description, because we are running out of time, and I'm really sorry for that. But I wanted to make a round of really thinking after your presentation. From Lebanon and from your financial, let's say, background point of view, how do you deploy, from a capital point of view, innovation systems?
Normally, when you get to speak last, I think you speak shortest. Yet I still feel that I need to introduce my title, Lebanon in Silicon Valley. Why Lebanon in Silicon Valley? I feel that Silicon Valley runs parallel in many ways to the Phoenicia of some 3,000 years ago. Phoenicia is where it's present-day Lebanon. Our forefathers were innovators. They were entrepreneurs who created a tool to grow their trade. I don't know why. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. And this tool was the Phoenician alphabet, which became the first widely used script in which one sound was represented by one symbol. It allowed access to information by wide segments of Mediterranean common people. It effectively democratized information. I feel it is the first ICT revolution. And isn't it similar to the Silicon Valley revolution of today, where an E was added to the Phoenician alpha, and we get the electronic alpha? Lebanon is a small Mediterranean parliamentary democracy pursuing free enterprise, liberal economy. It possesses very little natural resources. Government budget runs large deficits. So when we got some stability, political stability in the country in the past 10 years, we started thinking of how can we build productive capacity when you don't have neither resources nor budgetary support. And we felt that we had to rely on private initiative. It's now, during the past 10 years, we feel it's happening. And it has been amplified in the past 2 to 3 years. We did not realize we had been starting a rainforest until a couple of years ago. Our friend, Al Watkins from the World Bank, showed up on a mission to Lebanon. And we started believing that we are doing it and we can do it. But the starting point in our long trip is to know ourselves. We felt that we needed to build on our strengths. Each society has a unique strength. Ours is a highly educated, multicultural, human resource base. Why am I involved in the project? I'm a central banker. I'm probably the only civil servant working in the ecosystem. 3 years ago, following the global financial crisis, we started building on our strength with the private sector. The central bank played the role of initiator and a catalyst of the nascent entrepreneurial ecosystem. We started off by creating a website which we called Entrepreneurs Lebanon. We later started building networking. We looked at the ecosystem. We had 2 or 3 incubators. We had a university that was running a program on entrepreneurship. And we had a guarantor, a system which provides guarantees to bank loans, which is called kafalat. Kafalat effectively means guarantees. As an authority, central bank, that commands respect and possesses, in theory, large resources to allay the fears of investors, we started getting these people together. Initially, 3, 4 entities. Now, we have, since 2009, many universities, unlike India, that are running entrepreneurial programs, degrees, postgraduate degrees. We have 2 universities that have now institutes of entrepreneurship. And the universities have become major drivers of our ecosystem. With the networking events, we started seeing the mushrooming of venture capitalists, business angels, accelerators, and all that was done with little money spent, little public money spent. It was basically built on voluntary work. And let me recount a story of a volunteer who came to Lebanon from the United States. He is of Lebanese descent. This is an interesting story because he happened to work in Silicon Valley, and he started up his first venture, which failed. Then he started another venture, and it failed. And so he came back to Lebanon, and I met with him, and he volunteered to work with us on the project of Entrepreneurs Lebanon. Now, I've got two points to make. We have recently embarked on 2 projects. The first one is a networking events project where we get to match up investors with the entrepreneurs that have applied on our Entrepreneurs Lebanon website. We have a selection committee which consists of university professors, investment bankers, successful businessmen, and this failed Silicon Valley young man, because we feel that we can learn a lot from failure as much as success. And I'm the only public servant serving on this committee. The first event started last June. We had selected 9 projects, and we managed to get 7 of these projects successfully invested in by the venture capitalists and the investors present. The second and final project I want to talk about is a project which Gerardo yesterday spoke about. It's the World Bank loan, which we are now working for Lebanon, and it is intended to be a long-term loan to Lebanon, which is going to be passed through the guarantee system called kafalat, and it is going to be transformed from debt into equity. And this is, I think, one of the constraints in Lebanon. We don't have equity markets, so we are transforming this loan into equity. The central bank will oversee the process, kafalat will implement, and finally, I'm not sure that we are going to go back to the Phoenicia of the old ages, but I'm sure that we are really starting building a rainforest. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's in your story again. It's kind of like interesting because, I mean, how does capital play into this? Was not really the main topic. The main topic was how do we reach out to the culture that we need to, we need to address these people. We need to find those people that are on the ground and connect them and reach out to them. And then at the end of it, then there is some capital that plays into it. Now we're really going short on time, and that's unfortunate. So I would really try to, if you can switch to Twitter format. And kind of like, fire a couple of questions, and I mean, that I wanted to kind of like get an answer from all of you. Well, first of all, so far, so good. What has worked? in a tweet, what is the fundamental thing that in Colombia, what you've done so far with Connect, that you think has worked and why? And then the second question, you know, what on the other side, you're sure that flunked, didn't work at all, and why? In a tweet. I know it's tough. Actually, in 2 tweets.
What was the question?
What worked and why, and what didn't work?
I think that the first question is that since I mentioned this is a leadership challenge, when you are able to build trust along many years of work, when you ask people to be together, helping something like we did with Connect Bogota region, they will come. What hasn't worked? The local government. We have a mayor from the left, and the vision of these guys is completely different. They don't see the world, they see themselves. So that has been a huge challenge for us.
Paul, in your experience, and again, I don't know how much of this can be, let's say, extended to all of India, but you know, in your specific, you know, experience on the ground in the south, again, you know, the fundamental thing, you know, that made it work, will grow, and made it successful so far. And what, you know, if you could go back and change that didn't work, and you could do better, or that is not working, and you're trying to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, so as I started off saying, I think I might have started playing in different components of the ecosystem at an earlier stage before even trying to talk about incubation or investing of any kind. I think breaking that barrier, getting people to innovate, getting people to entrepreneurship itself is a challenge in a country where a large proportion of people still aspire to work in the government as a career. So I think that's changing, but I think that's what I would actually do differently.
Right. Yeah. How would you do it differently? What is it that you would like to change?
I think the challenge of building an ecosystem is far more complex than what comes across on these slides. I think it is a patient game. It consumes resources. It takes a lot of leadership. It requires great strategic thought coupled with very, very tight execution on the ground. So I think if one has to do it, it requires resources of all kinds. But I think there is a patience required, there is a focus required, and I think that's key to making that work.
Thank you. And your experience again. When did you start the program, did you say?
Well, effectively, we had a company called Kafalat some 10 years ago, but the program proper, Entrepreneurs Lebanon, was started 2009.
2009.
3 years ago. So I think what we managed to do, and it was successful, is that we brought together the various players who did not communicate in 2009. We brought them over. We used the strength and the background of the central bank as a respected authority to get them to talk to each other. And we started one networking event after the other, building trust. And eventually, everybody is now talking with each other, and they're participating in projects like mentorship, acceleration. And we feel that there is a community now that enjoys doing what they're doing. It is really fun, what we are seeing now.
Thank you very much. So I guess, again, I mean, it all boils down to the people. You know, behind every organization in ecosystem, behind the university, behind the government, behind the startup, behind the VC, at the end of the day, there is people. And so I think one of the lessons that I learned from all of you today, that was a common trait of your presentations, in a way, was, again, that, I guess, reaching out to the right people, the people that can link together the people that can drive other people behind them, can be inspirational, and can kind of like glue the system and build this trust, which is, again, at the center of all the, let's say, potential success that any innovation ecosystem can have. Without that, transactions don't happen. People need to trust each other. They need to be working together. So, I guess, again, the first learning of it for me is that any ecosystem should try to reach out and understand who are the relevant people that not only for the skill set and the organization where they sit, but for the mindset could, act as an aggregator, or as in the book was called the keystones. So again, now we are on to another session. We are recouped a little bit, a couple of minutes. So thank you very much for the panel today, and thank you very much for listening. So on to the next event in the program, What Makes a Rainforest. Thank you.